I'm Jason Galvin. I am one of the lead announcers in NHRA, the National Hot Rod Association, as well as a play-by-play voice for California State University Bakersfield Athletics on ESPN Plus. And this is the Breaking the Biz podcast. Breaking the Biz.
Breaking the Biz. Breaking the Biz. Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity Through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz podcast with the Yes I Can crew. We have got a great guest with us. We have Jason Galvin, who is a professional sports broadcaster. He started his career in broadcasting in August 2005 at KHTS Radio here in Santa Clarita, California. From there, he worked for numerous companies, providing a multitude of journalistic works, from play-by-play announcing on the Pac-12 Digital Networks to breaking news for USA Today's Sports. After moving to Bakersfield, California in October 2014, he began anchoring weekend sports for KGET TV 17, an NBC affiliate. After 1 year, he moved to news full-time as an anchor of 17 News at Sunrise, the market leader for morning news and an Emmy winner. Currently, he's working for the voice of CSU Bakersfield baseball for Learfield Sports. He began working on MAVTV's coverage of Madera Raceway this year as well. Jason, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's talk about when you were a kid. Was the dream to play baseball or sports? Did you love sports as a kid?
Yeah, so I grew up in a sports household. Was very fortunate in the family surroundings, and then I had an uncle who more like a father figure to me, and he had season tickets to the Dodgers and the Lakers. I was born in 1987, so good time to be a Dodgers fan. Amazing time to be a Lakers fan. I grew up on the back of Magic and kind of the super tail end of Kareem, and rolled right into the Kobe years and 5 world championships with him. And so I've had this kind of deep love and affinity for sports for as long as I can remember. My family also comes from a pretty rich background in professional auto racing, which is how I'm gotten to some of the spots that I'm in here. So it's kind of been a competitive tendency to me. Not an athletic bone in my body, unfortunately, as much as I wish that there was. I'd like to think that I would have made an amazing coach had I, pursued that, whether it be football or baseball. I have what I think is a pretty deep understanding of those games, and I've always kind of loved the nuances and the analytics of them. But I just, I just physically am not, not good. One of the great things about auto racing is you don't necessarily have to be a great athlete if you understand how to drive a race car. And so I've actually had, the opportunity to do a little racing myself through the years, to quite a bit of success, considering the part-time kind of nature and stature of that. And a lot of that stuff kind of led me to where I am today. From a stick and ball standpoint, baseball is my first love. My fondest memories as a kid were either going to the racetrack to watch family or close friends compete or, going to Dodger Stadium or turning on a Dodger game and listening to Vin Scully. Baseball is the one sport that I consistently played as a kid every summer. I didn't have an opportunity to play, baseball, football, basketball, soccer, like a lot of kids do. I kind of had to pick one just given the family dynamics that I had at home with my parents. And the baseball was the sport that, I played consistently for the better part of 12 or 13 years. So that sport, I think will always kind of be, at the center of my heart as the sport that I love the most from the stick and ball standpoint. And I don't think that will ever leave me. So.
It's an awesome answer too, because so many of us want to, be a rock star, or, we want to direct like Steven Spielberg, or, make the Grand Theft Auto. And sometimes you can't necessarily be in front of the camera, behind the camera. And there's all these different jobs that you can get into behind the scenes, so to speak. And if you're passionate about sports, and you necessarily, a very small number make it to the pros and get to, play those sports. So being able to take your love, your knowledge, the analytics of baseball, and then continue to do it with announcing. And I love what you said with, the racing of the cars. Like, if you can race a car, you don't have to be in the best physical shape. You just have to probably have some good resilience and be able to withstand hot temperatures and focus for sure.
Yeah, focus is everything. I have found that racing cars is more of a mental game and a seat of the pants game. Your ability to kind of feel the race car and what it's doing and how it's responding, how it's reacting. There's certainly a degree of physicality that comes with it. I work out, not well, but I try to, and, you certainly don't need to be, a world-class athlete. You do if you want to be like a Formula One driver. Those are world-class athletes, right? Top NASCAR drivers. Most people know Jimmy Johnson as one of the greatest NASCAR drivers ever. What most people don't realize is he's also like a nationally competitively ranked triathlete. From that standpoint, yes. But, to do it at kind of the smaller level, more of the, semi-pro, I guess, I would call it. We have different names for it in the industry, depending on what type of racing you're looking at. But, you don't. You're me. Some of the race, and I work in drag racing now on a full-time basis. And, our longest race lasts 15 seconds. So, it's, from that standpoint, it's much more about your ability to react quickly to the lights flashing and race your opponent. Some of that racing has a lot of strategy involved in it and the ability to kind of think quickly on your feet or in the seat of the car in this case. So that's kind of one of the things that I've always loved, like specifically about racing, right? Is I now work in a sport that is like truly all inclusive. The one thing about the National Hot Rod Association and NHRA Championship drag racing and what I get to do as the full-time, one of the full-time lead guys there. I travel the country 25, 26 weekends a year. I just came home from Sonoma, just kind of a home race, Napa, San Francisco area. The week before I was in Seattle. The week before that I was in Columbus, Ohio. The week before that I was in Norwalk, Ohio. The week before that I was in Richmond, Virginia. The week before that I was in Bristol, Tennessee. So, we're like all over the country. And, I've watched 85-year-old men win their first race ever. I watched a 19-year-old woman drive a race car that goes from 0 to 275 miles per hour in 5 seconds and beat the daylights out of all the guys. So truly, it is that it's like, to me, the great equalizing sport where if the race car doesn't know if you're 18 or 80, doesn't know if you're a man or a woman, doesn't know if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, somewhere in between. It doesn't know if you have a developmental or a physical disability. All it knows is that I'm a race car, and whoever is at the controls has all the power. And to me, that's the coolest thing about my job right now is I just kind of watch those stories play out every week.
I love your passion, and when you say an inclusive sport, the example you just gave, hands down, has to be the most inclusive sport. So I love that. No stereotypes can get in the way. Let's talk about your schooling. So you were in Santa Clarita. When you were in high school, sports, obviously, played a little sports.
So never actually played on a high school sports team. I had some injuries that put me kind of at a disadvantage, I feel like, my freshman year. And I was probably lazy about it, could have done a better job. I got a little dejected by some stuff. And so I just kind of never pursued actually playing again. And I actually was pretty focused on business as a high school student. I went into high school not really knowing specifically what I wanted to do with my life, although I certainly would have preferred to end up with a career in sports some way. I went to Valencia High School. I grew up in Castaic, Live Oak Elementary, Castaic Middle School, went to Valencia High School, class of 05. It was just as West Branch was opening. So I was the second to last, or maybe even the last class from Castaic that went to Valencia versus getting shuttled off to West Branch. And obviously, long before we had, high school in Castaic, as I understand we have now. So went to Valencia High School and got kind of lucky in the sense of one of the elective classes that they just put me in with a marketing class, intro marketing class that I really enjoyed. Loved the teacher, Dennis Mifflin, who I think still at least does some things with Valencia High School. And he ran a program called DECA, Distributive Educational Clubs of America, the business and marketing club across the country. And it's competitive. You have competitions that you show up to. You have regional events, you have state events, and there's a national competition. And they'll have role-playing events and testing and stuff. And so somebody who was ultra competitive, but physically didn't have a good way to kind of show my competitiveness, if that makes sense, or at least win. I could be as competitive as I wanted to, and I was still going to think. I found an avenue where I could be as competitive as I wanted to be, and I'm, to a fault, overly competitive. My wife would tell you she's doing a good job toning that back a little. But there was a time where if I lost at a video game, I was throwing stuff, so I found kind of an angle there. So I fell in love with DECA and with marketing, and Dennis Mifflin was instrumental in that. One of those like real hero teachers, in my opinion, at the time. If a student was willing to reciprocate and show that they had a passion and an interest in something, he was going to give you that time above and beyond, even if it was the detriment to his family time or his private time or whatnot. So worked my way through DECA, ended up being the president of that club. By the time I graduated, ended up being a state champion and a national placer in vehicle and petroleum marketing, which again, always loved cars. So it kind of played into that role. And that was the route that I thought I was going in when I left Valencia High School. I didn't really have a college plan other than I knew I wanted to go to CSU for a couple of years, and went to College of the Canyons and enrolled in marketing classes. I was a business marketing guy. I had aspirations of, having an MBA one day from, big time business school. So that it wasn't necessarily like the, I guess traditional career path, if that makes sense. But that's all right. I tell people all the time, like, anybody who goes through life and knew exactly what they wanted to be before college or their early 20s and became that and is successful at that is really lucky and blessed. And they're also like the 1%. Everybody else, like I have friends who are 35 and still don't know what they want to do with their life, and that's okay. They're successful with some of the stuff they're doing, but they don't necessarily love it, and they're still searching and trying things. And I think that's okay. One of the beautiful things about life is you kind of get to guide yourself and make your own path. So if I was not on this path at all when I graduated high school, let me tell you.
And it's great that you mentioned that, right? Because we can always go different paths. Some people do 4 year, 2 years. Some people go on to different types of schooling and programs. It's very true what you said. It's very hard to just have that, I'm going to be this, and pursue it and actually knock that out. And I think we change too. Sometimes we want to do something and we get exposed to something else, and that leads you down a completely different path. But yours, with the marketing and loving of the sports and the competitiveness, all of it kind of comes hand in hand with what you're doing right now. So when you graduate high school, You mentioned you went to COC. While you're at COC studying marketing, when do you end up at KTH or KHTS radio?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you said, and the way you said it was really good, but phrased it, and I don't want to misquote you, but you basically just effectively said something along the lines like sometimes you get introduced to something that you may not realize you really love, and it turns out you do. And so that's what happened with me. I could tell you exactly where I was. It was just after I graduated high school, late spring, early summer of 2005. I was driving down McBean Parkway on my way to my job at the mall, Magic Mountain Parkway, on my way to the job at the mall, where I worked and was the manager of a sports apparel store at the time. Had already enrolled in my, fall classes at COC, and my uncle, aforementioned, talked about, big influence on my life, called me and said something effectively along the lines of, hey, so I was driving to the office today. He owns a very successful business down in the San Fernando Valley, lived in Santa Clarita. I had Dan Patrick on in the car, and I had an epiphany. I said, okay, Pat, what's your epiphany? He said, you know a lot about sports, and you don't know how to shut up. You should do what Dan Patrick does. Well, I don't know whether to be offended or motivated or, slapped across the face, probably a little bit of everything. But that was the first time that I guess I had ever really considered that. To me, sports broadcasters were this mythical, legendary mountain. And I had Vince Scully and Chick Hearn and Bob Miller as Dodger, Laker, Kings fans. And, I had people in racing, drag racing, the Steve Evans and David McClellan are not household names unless you're a drag racing fan, but in the drag racing world, they are every bit the Vince Scully, the Marv Alberts, the Jack Buck, those names are to stick and ball sports fans. So, that I knew of KHTS, and I knew that they broadcasted, some high school sports stuff for my time at Valencia. I was really fortunate. I was at Valencia in a really golden time for their athletic program, and, went to every football game in my senior year, Homer Road, took massive road trips after high school to get there to, Fridays getting out of school at 3:00 to be at a game in, North San Diego County at 7 and make it by the skin of our teeth type of deal. But our team was really good. We competed for a state championship that year, and it was a fun ride to be on. And so because of that, I'd seen a lot of HTS, and Dave Caldwell, who was sports director at the time, around. So I reached out to the station and immediately was told right away, we always have a need for interns. So they offered me a position as an intern. I got paid, I don't know, $40 a game or something like that. And I would go to, whatever they deemed was the second best game of the week in town or sometimes out of town. And I would call in, reports like a field stringer, basically, so, we're, Dave could be at the Valencia Heart game and I might be at Canyon and Saugus. And, I'd every, 10 to 15 minutes, I'd call in on my cell phone, something along the lines of hey, Dave, 6:45 left in the first quarter here at Saugus High School. Saugus just took their first lead of the game on a 50-yard touchdown run by Desi Rodriguez. Canyon has the ball right now and they're driving to the 50-yard line, and we'll keep you updated. From Saugus High School, I'm Jason Galvin, 13-7 Saugus, 6 minutes left in the first or wherever we're at, right? And so that's how it started effectively. And then while I was doing that, I was at COC, and in my marketing class, Dave Brill, the singular most instrumental and influential human in my life when it comes to my career, happened to come into the marketing class, and he runs the television production program there, still does to this day. He's the director of that program. And he came in and kind of pitched this deal for Cougar News. It was known effectively at the time. And that was that. I mean, I was, okay, I'm interested. I signed up for Gene Miller's class that had to do with, something along the lines of radio and television. announcing, broadcasting, basically like a voice class. I signed up for Dave's intro to television production class, and the rest was history. I mean, like my whole life pivoted on a course that one day in a marketing class. I dropped the marketing stuff. I flung 180 degrees to the television production side of things and started pursuing a passion to potentially be an on-air sports broadcaster. And during that same time while I was at COC, the second year at KHTS as an intern and kind of board operator and whatnot, there were some opportunities to call College of the Canyons football, because at that point as a high school district in Santa Clarita, the Hart District had expanded, right? Like I mentioned, West Ranch and Golden Valley. And so we went from 4 to 6 schools. They didn't necessarily have the football fields they needed at the time. And so there came a time, for a couple of years there, where some high school games were played on Saturday instead of Friday. And they would conflict with College of the Canyons games. And so we're talking like 2006 here, primitive years of things like internet streaming. But HDS found a way for us to, through literally a hardwired phone line with a rotary phone, like you saw in I Love Lucy reruns, to call in, to hook a Comrex into it. And we were streaming College of the Canyons games on Saturday for CSU fans while doing the Valencia games live over the air radio. Which of course at the time, 2005, 2006 was the dominant medium. It wasn't streaming as it would be now. Now streaming would get the number one game by a mile, and you put the other game on over the air. It wasn't that way back then. People barely knew what streaming was, but it made sense because College of the Canyons was a community college that had a lot of players from out of state, and so it figured, those fans would be more likely to go to the internet and listen, and the ones who really cared about the game would be at the stadium anyway. So had an opportunity with a gentleman named Joe Soriano, who worked in the TV industry, I think still to this day, in TV production for like TV shows and movies and stuff. But played at and coached the COC to be the play-by-play guy for some games there. And Dave Caldwell was presented with an opportunity to start at STV TV the following year, and was also doing some stuff with Fox, and that's what led to me getting the sports director position at KHTS. So it just, in a matter of like 18 months, went from having no idea that I could get paid to talk about sports for a living to being a 19-year-old kid who was the sports director at a radio station in town. So I didn't know anything about radio, but I was a sports director.
It's phenomenal. I love it because we talk about adaptability, and sometimes you have to pivot. And you just did it on a whim, like, getting that phone call where they're like, you love sports, you talk nonstop. This is what you're passionate about. You should go and pursue it and do it. I love that you just on the whim started taking different classes, learning as much as you can, from the voicing to the radio to the marketing, radio, television, film. I think that's a phenomenal example. And then taking an internship, I always push for an internship because it's an opportunity to learn. It's also an opportunity to go in there and show that you're quite serious and that, you are an asset to wherever you are interning. And obviously you were, being able to call a second game and have 2 games at this point, and then eventually becoming the director over there of sports over at KHTS. Phenomenal. So I want to know, once you're the director there, talk me through what comes next.
Yeah. So, what came next was a little bit of an early life reality check, if that makes sense. I think I had too much success at a micro level too quick and had a macro brain, if that makes sense. So, I think I assumed after 1 year of calling high school football that ESPN would be calling to replace Mike Tirico with me on Monday Night Football the next year. And so, I got a little lazy on some stuff and a little arrogant, a lot arrogant, in fact, a lot arrogant. And I regret some of that stuff, but you learn from it. I think that's all you can really do. You can't really, sit and sulk on it. So, I spent, another 4 or 5 years in the Santa Clarita Valley. I am really proud of that. The pivot to that is at College of the Canyons. Dave and Ron Intrican were really receptive to our lofty ambitions. So there was a group of students, and we all came in at the same time. and I could rattle them off now because they're like the who's of this industry now. And we came in, and at the time, Cougar News was like a half-hour local news show on the Santa Clarita Valley every 2 weeks that was taped and aired a day or two later. And within like 24 months, we were live once a week for an hour. We were live streaming COC sports. Brian Lewis, Austin Dave, and myself drove down to San Diego to Grossmont and live streamed a playoff softball series one year when we thought our softball team had a real chance to win the state national championship. It was a bad weekend for them, but I mean, we're talking like 2008 here, and we were like carrying tower computers that still took floppy disks in them if you wanted to, and live streaming on like a wood desk that you had in your 5th grade classroom with a couple of like fold out chairs outdoor on a 100-degree day in San Diego. Internet didn't work. They said it would. Had to go to the Verizon store and buy a Wi-Fi card back in, which was like AOL dial-up speed. So just a lot of kind of cool stuff. Got to the point where we were live streaming tons of COC local sports. I mean, like anything we could: volleyball, basketball, football, soccer, baseball, did softball. So really cool that we were kind of afforded free reign to, hey, if you can figure out how to make it work, like we're in. Like you have full support of the faculty. So, I mean, we literally lived at COC as they were building what is now, I think, one of the greatest media and arts departments in college across the country, let alone at the community college level. They were still building that building up in the top floor there in the studio that they have and whatnot. But, I mean, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go to CSC. Like I might not have had a class that day. I went to CSC and sat there and we talked about sports and we talked about production and we found out what we were going to do next and packages and play-by-play and learned as much as we could about it. And so that was really cool. And I mean, literally, like I could quickly run through a list here, but like, I mean, Kelly Nix was started on air and is going to the production and directing. The last that I checked was the morning producer at Fox and Friends. Jonathan Gonzalez is the weekend anchor at NBC4 in Los Angeles now, was part of our crew. Corey Rubin, who's the coordinating producer and camera operator and ENG operator for NASCAR on Fox and NASCAR on NBC, lives in Santa Clarita still, but travels the country as one of the guys who does really fancy camera and graphics works for the NASCAR productions with, 10 million people watching the Daytona 500, was part of that. Austin Dave, who's now intricately involved in media in the Valley with What's Up STV and some other stuff, and at COC. Brian Lewis, who is now the video ops director for San Diego Padres. There was myself, and I'm sure, frankly, I'm missing 3 or 4 other people. Just an amazing group. That group worked together so well that every one of us, except for John, transferred to Arizona State together. Like we collectively as a group chose between USC and Arizona State and went to Arizona State to their Cronkite school when we were done at COC. So we had like a stretch there of like, I want to say 6 or 7 years in college between COC and ASU where, I mean, there was like 8 or 9 of us and we did everything together. And it led to some really cool opportunities at ASU too that kind of, springboarded, I think, most of our careers. So that was like kind of what was next. Like the KHTS deal, I was sports director there. That wasn't really anything that I personally grew to feel like had a future, if that makes sense. Like they valued high school sports more for its ability to self-sponsorship. And that's fine. And now that I am 37 years old and understand the business, I don't blame them, right? But to them, it was less about the product and what more can we do and what can we add. And it was more about how much money can we make. I get it. Totally get it. They run a local radio station, not the easiest thing in the world, to get rich off of. So, but at the time, I didn't understand that. That's part of where I said some of the ego stuff came into play for sure. I was 19, 20 years old, and I really didn't give 2 bleeps about how much money they were making. To me, it was more about what more can we do and how does it help me. It was a very selfish approach to life. But it's what you got out of a 19 or a 20-year-old who had some local celebrity all of a sudden that he never expected he would have in his life. So in many ways, that helped me kind of go focus more on the COC things. I did the KHTS work. It was not a full-time job. I set a football and a basketball schedule. I picked the games. I hired the color commentators and the interns. And, it's kind of my responsibility to make sure the games come on the air, which is a lot of pressure. for, a 21, 22-year-old at the time, kid who didn't have an experience in that and was not a full-time employee. I got paid per diem rates. But we made it work. There's a lot of things about that. I got a lot of fond memories, some really cool moments and getting to call games in some really cool places and being part of some really cool things. And you learn with that life experience. What you said about internships real quick, I want to say.
Yeah, go for it.
If you take anything away from listening to anybody on these shows or whatever you do in your life, in your career, if you're trying to better yourself, especially if you're younger or you're still starting off and you have a real passion for something, if there's an opportunity for an internship, never, ever, 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 ever say no. Because even if you show up the first day and find out it is the worst place in the world to work, the person who owns it or runs it or is your supervisor overlooks it is the world's biggest jerk, and you would never want to work for them ever again, then you've learned that. And you can say, you know what, respectfully, I'm not sure this is a good fit moving forward, so I appreciate the opportunity, and you can move on. But you may find something you really love. You may find that it's not exactly what you thought you were going to love going into it, and you may make some connections that you never know down the road how those will come back to help you positively.
I love that you mentioned that. I want to give you kudos, first of all, because all of the people that you mentioned, you guys were complete disruptors, and I mean that in the most positive way. You saw a need and created an amazing program over there at COC and Cougar News. And just like you mentioned, Corey and Austin, very talented individuals like yourself, and are doing it right now, right? Like, I love watching the news and then seeing film by Austin Dave, or, he's got his hands in a bunch of things as well,
Gives me anxiety how busy that guy is.
Yeah. He's a genius, a very, very talented individual. I love, though, too, what you talked about with the internship, because I always hear I feel it's a lot easier to find what you do want to do by experiencing what you don't want to do. And your take on an internship is that, like, you could go there and spend a few days and go, not for me. I would say try to give it a little bit more and see. But at the same time, you might go in there for one thing and then go, wait a minute, I would like to go this route. Like, maybe you go like marketing, but then you're like, wait a minute, I could do sports broadcasting, and that's something that I really love, and I can even mesh the marketing. I'm sure the marketing background came in full swing with what you guys were doing over there with Cougar News and capturing all the different games. I love
the marketing background comes in full swing for me on a daily basis, though, especially in my role now. I have a position now, and the bio that you read off the start makes me remember that at some point I should update my website that I haven't updated in a long time. But that's kind of one of those lazy deals where I frankly have a position that I love and have some job security, and so I haven't really felt the need to go update it. Right? Shame on me. Don't take that from me. The same thing that you take from here. Don't be lazy about stuff like that. But like my current position with the NHRA, like we're a full-time professional sport. We have 20 national events in 17 cities across the country. We have a major television broadcast deal with Fox. There is over $500 million in sponsorship assets spent on that sport every year between the series, the races, the tracks, the race teams. We will have over 2 million paying seated ticketed customers this year by the time the year is over. So, like, in that world, the marketing stuff is like constantly in the back of my head, because it's my job. My job very specifically is I am the one of the in-venue voices on our team. And then also we have a streaming platform called NHRA.TV. And so if you want to tune in and watch the races all day uninterrupted, effectively commercial free. The only time you see commercials is when we play them on the big screens at the racetrack, because there's something not happening on the track, downtime, a crash, an oil down. Track prep is a big thing in drag racing. So that is my job, is to be one of the leading voices and faces of that and our presentation. to the public, to the paying customer who comes in with their family of four and spent $250 on tickets and spent another $200 in concessions and another $300 on t-shirts, and that's a big day, right, for a family. So I have to be cognizant of that and respect what those families have come in and spent and have set their time aside for. But also, it's my job to present to them the businesses that partner with us, Mission Foods, right? Like everybody here eats tacos or tortillas. If you've ever bought a Mission tortilla, you've helped fund my career because Mission Foods is the presenting food. We're the Mission Foods NHRA drag racing series. Camping World is one of our biggest associate sponsors. If you ever bought a camper or if you've ever rented one, we have major deals with companies like Cornwell Tools for people who have stopped, with Toyota, buying a car, everybody's buying a car, right? So in that regard, the marketing aspect of things is mega, because I have to be thinking about that as I'm presenting this product and these $1 trillion brands of, collectively publicly traded companies to all of our paying customers. I think about the marketing aspect nonstop. Almost every word that comes out of my mouth, I think about how that affects our marketing partners.
Yeah, I mean, 500 million in sponsorship is no joke, right? Like that's some serious money. And we've had people on the show who have talked about marketing and how important it is to keep your promise to a brand. And, if you're going to have an activation for them, or if you're promising them a certain amount of customers and everything you say, you have to then deliver. And it usually takes somebody working with those brands to have repeat customers. But yeah, like what you talked about, Camping World and Mission products, like I absolutely, I love that. You talked about going to Arizona with that talented group of individuals. I love that because sometimes college is all about finding those relationships. Sometimes those are people that you'll network with and maybe have a career with later on. Talk me through how important networking has been for your success.
Listen, the easiest way to tell you how important networking has been for my success would be to explain how networking has allowed me to get where I'm at. So when I got to Arizona State, one of the first gigs that I got out there was with a company that's no longer around, but they were on kind of the forefront of streaming high school sports video content. I met that person who got me a job doing play-by-play for football and basketball through contacts when I was doing high school football out here in California. The next major break job I got was as being one of the lead voices at Phoenix International Raceway for their NASCAR and IndyCar weekend. I got that through my time at Irwindale Speedway out in Los Angeles, Irwindale, just past Pasadena, through people that I had met there. And when I moved to Phoenix, knew that the track had an opening for an announcer and knew that I had just moved there and was capable. And so that person got me that gig. That gig led to the NHRA opportunities I have now. And it led to that through me meeting some of the NHRA broadcasters at a NASCAR race who were just there hanging out. And so when I later went to an NHRA race with my family, I was able to reintroduce myself. They remembered me and let them know that I had some interest. And that afforded me an opportunity to try out and get an entry-level position that I've now worked my way up to being one of the lead guys. In between there, I left Arizona State, went to get into local TV because I really wanted, through the NASCAR deal, to work in NASCAR television at the time. Was told I needed live TV experience. One thing I didn't really have, I had streaming, I had track PA, but I didn't have live TV. Applied at KGET in Bakersfield, California, which is where I still live. I'm inside my house in Bakersfield. Applied there for that weekend sports job that you talked about off the top. The story I was told was they had a stack of resumes. It was over 300 people deep. And the sports director at KGT at the time was basically left to weed that stack down to 4 or 5 that she thought had the most promise, and then deliver them to the news director and GM. And they would do the interviews in between because there was some, as you mentioned off the top, some news aspect to it as well. So you want to make sure they had somebody who was versatile. The sports director at the time at KGC was a lady named Lena Washington, who's now on the NBC station in Phoenix. Lena Washington was a graduate of Arizona State University the year before I graduated. And while we did not know each other when we were at the Cronkite School, we'd never met. Our paths had never crossed. I was the one applicant out of 300 and something who was a graduate of the Cronkite School, and she knew that she could trust me and that I would have a versatile background, that I wasn't just trained in sports and I didn't have my head ingrained in I'm going to be a sports anchor. I'd be willing to pick up a camera, go shoot a news story, edit it, do a live shot. And then when I was done with all of that after a 9-hour day, pick another camera up and go to a football game and film something for our Friday night show, come back and re-anchor it and have a 14-hour day, because it was stuff that was ingrained in me when I was at ASU. So, I mean, like, how important is networking? I think I just laid it out. Every job I have ever had in my career as a stepping stone, this Cal State Bakersfield job as the play-by-play guy, while I was at KGC, I would do stuff. Hi, buddy. Oh, everybody say hi to my 5-year-old real quick. Hi. You're okay, babe. There you go. That's very cool, bud. Let me finish this, please. Sorry about that. Just walked back into the store. Very excited. When I was at KGT, got to know the people at Cal State Bakersfield. They were expanding their sports broadcasting. At the time, they just had radio for men's basketball and baseball. They were starting a streaming department that was going to work with, at the time they were in the Western Athletic Conference, so the WAC Digital Networks, and needed somebody to do play-by-play, and knew that I had some play-by-play experience through some stuff we'd done at KGT. We did some high school and college football. We did a minor league hockey game live on the NBC station in Los Angeles. They did an outdoor classic game in the football stadium up here with the Bakersfield team and the Ontario Reign, who were the Kings AHL team. And so I had fostered some of those relationships and had done all the production work for it, and then voiced the games as well. And so they knew that I had that ability, and they called me and said, "Hey, we're starting up, the streaming stuff. Would you like to come do baseball and women's basketball and maybe some soccer?" Literally every job. And then I grew with that through the WAC into the Big West, now on ESPN Plus, and could contract out and do some other stuff as well. So literally every job I've ever had in my career, I had to have the talent. I had to have the ability. I had to have a good working reputation. You don't get anywhere in this business without that. Everybody in this business knows somebody, and they know, you're not a good person to work with. But the one thing that I had was a direct relationship to somebody I'd worked with in the past that kind of ushered me into that job. Networking is everything in life.
I think that is a phenomenal example how everything has been a stepping stone. But I want to give you kudos on a lot of it, because you're willing, you mentioned when you were at the racetrack you reintroduced yourself. You again self-advocated for the fact that this is something that you want to do in a job you want to grow into. And some people think that you're just gonna, get that call from Dan Patrick and take over, right? But like you mentioned, you get your foot in the door and you work hard, and people take notice, and then you grow and you keep going and you make your moves. So I love that. I also want to highlight the fact that you can film it, voice it, edit it, and do everything. And that makes you a very dynamic individual and an asset when you have someone where you don't have to say, okay, now edit that. Like, you can do it yourself. So I love that. I want to ask you, is there a mantra that you find yourself saying that kind of keeps you positive or focused, during the day?
I could tell you what my favorite quote ever is, and it's something that I try to think about if I'm having a bad day, or if I'm having a tough day, or if I know that I have an opportunity to maybe make an impact through some people that I'm meeting, or these days in the drag racing world, I'm lucky enough to meet fans every week who they watch 19 weekends of the year, or one weekend they get to meet, and they think that you're this like mythical figure or whatnot. And it's a quote by Jackie Robinson, who's my favorite person ever. And everything. And like 42 is my favorite number, my race car number. I have loved Jackie Robinson. First time I read about him when I was 5 years old. And the quote is, a life is not important except for in the impact it has on other people's lives. So I think if you can kind of think of it that way, and just remember that every day you have an opportunity to have an impact on somebody's life, and that impact could be negative. And then is that really what you want to be remembered for? You know, do you want people walking away from an interaction with you thinking, wow, the person's real dirt? You know, and I'm not going to tell you that I've been perfect with it. You know, that's not human nature. You know, there are certainly times where, you know, I'm not the best person in the world. But I try to remember that as much as I can.
I love it. So you're traveling, you know, so much throughout the year. How do you balance, you know, family time?
It's hard. It's hard. There's no other way around that. It's hard. My wife is a rock star. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. I have a 5-year-old who's like the best kid in the world. As you can tell, he's literally bringing me candy right now. It's fair. And I think it helps that I'm pretty open and honest. We both are with him, and have been since he was born, or old enough to understand it really about what Daddy does and why he does it. And, you know, he gets to watch me on TV when he wants to, and he gets to come to events, you know, when we're able to, which I think is a big deal. To me, that's important, that if he wants to come spend time, that, you know, he's willing to, and he understands the dynamics of my job. But I mean, there were many times this year during baseball season where he'd come to a baseball game for 2 or 3 innings, and he'd sit in the booth next to me, never say a word. He knew when I was on air and when I wasn't. If my light was on my, you know, on my box, then my mic is plugged into, it meant Daddy's working. And if the light was off, it meant that he was free to ask me questions and talk and whatnot. So that's, that to me, that's the only way that I know, to kind of balance that. I try to be as present as I can when I'm home with them. And, you know, my wife works full time as well, so I need to feel the same way about when she's home. But the support system is like everything, you know. I mean, my mother-in-law, her mom is incredible. Drives up, or we can say JJ down, almost at will. And I'm lucky that, you know, that my son has that type of relationship with his grandparents. My mom is involved with the candy as well. She was a little bit farther away. You know, you got to have a good kind of backbone system. That's the one thing. If you're going to pursue a career like this, where traveling is a big part of it. You really have to understand that going into it. I'm fortunate that my wife and I met in Santa Clarita. We graduated high school the same year. We didn't know each other in high school. We graduated the same year, so it's August. And she followed me out to Arizona. She knew what I was pursuing for a career when I went to Arizona. When I went to Kronk High School, she knew what I wanted to do with my life, and she knew that there was a good chance that one day we wanted to have a family and kids. But that also meant that, you know, fair or not, I was going to be asking, you know, a fair amount of time. So I think you just have to maximize the time that you do have. I mean, that's all you can do.
Perfect. I love it. I got one last question, and then we'll let some individuals ask some questions. What's the biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self with all that you've experienced and learned? I mean, you've navigated so many different jobs. Each job has gotten bigger. You've just kept climbing. Well, is there one piece of advice you would give to a younger Jason?
Take a step back and soak it in, you know. So I look back, and I was probably in such a hurry to get to a place where I am now that, you know, there are probably some things that I, you know, regret. I don't know if regret's the right word, but, you know, and I really don't like the, you know, you would have done it different, because I feel like everything that you did kind of shaped it. But, you know, I guess if I was guiding a young me, you know, would advise to just kind of, you know, take a step back. You know, things will happen if they happen. If you work hard and you're good to people and you're willing to help and be part of a team, you know, that's so important in this industry. I can't even describe it. You know, I feel like so many people on our team look at me, and this has been the case in many of my jobs, as, you know, kind of this, you know, isolationist person, because you're the on-air person, right? And like for our broadcast, for example, between the NHRA.TV and the Fox production, I mean, we have 7 big rigs, 150, 160 people who work on the shows collectively every week across the country. And there's 7 of us who get to hold a microphone and be on national TV or national streaming services or stand in front of 55,000 people and do the job. So I realize that those people kind of look at us in a different, kind of held to a different standard. And I think that's a good thing. I think we should be, because we're not just the faces of that sport or, that broadcast or whatnot, but we're also the faces of, in this case, hundreds of people of the jobs they do, and a representation of them and their families. And I think that's important to try to remember that, or even on a micro level at, the local news, local TV station where we've had, maybe 40 employees between production and, directing and sales and, camera operators and on-air people. Like, you do something on air, you're not just representing yourself or your co-anchor. You're representing the person who's directing the show, or the person who, sold the football show to the car dealership and now, maybe feels like they're getting a bad return on investment or a great return on investment, depending on how you put into that. So like, I think that's the thing, is like, don't be in such a hurry to try to get to the next place. Try to soak in those moments, the good moments, especially try to really understand them and soak them in, and always be willing to help somebody else. Like, especially if you want to be in a position where you are considered a leader of your production, whether that means you want to work in, and maybe somebody on this call wants to produce music videos, right? And they want to be the director of music videos. Well, that still means that you have, 4 or 5 camera operators, and you've got grips, and you've got stage hands, and you've got catering people and runners, and, treating them like they're not any less significant than you goes a long, long way. Like, those people will remember it. They will work harder for you. They'll work harder with you, and it will make your job so much easier.
Man, it's such good advice coming out of you, Jason. I absolutely agree. You have to enjoy the journey in the process. It's not always about the destination, but if you appreciate, how you got there, it's even a little more sweet. So absolutely, some really amazing knowledge there. All right. On that note, Jason, you have been an amazing guest for us tonight. Extremely insightful, really good knowledge, your self-awareness, the understanding of communication and collaboration, the importance of networking, the appreciation of the mentors that have come before you and changed the direction of your life. I love the fact you're a great example of you can study and put time into something, and at any moment, if you feel that's not right for you and you want to pursue something else, you guys create your own life. So make sure you are happy. Do not do anything for anyone else. Follow your dreams, follow your passions. And if you do, you will not work another day in your life. You'll have a lot of travel and a lot of early mornings. But if you love what you do, as you can see Jason does, that's exactly what it's all about. Taking your passion and taking that and turning it into a paycheck. So, Jason, I just want to thank you once again for your amazing story and giving us an hour of your time to inspire us.
I appreciate it. Thank you all. If I could leave you with something, I'll leave you with this. I understand that this is an inclusive group, and that most of us that are here tonight have some sort of, whether intellectual or learning disabilities or physical limitations. Don't ever let somebody tell you you're not good enough. If there's something you want to do, I guarantee you can do it. I have a cousin who, when he was 4 years old, died 3 times after an incident with a wood statue at his house. He went through his entire life with learning disabilities, went through his entire life with physical limitations. That last video you showed there of that 336 mile per hour race car that won a world championship last year, that same cousin builds the motor on that race car now. Nobody can ever tell you you're not good enough.
Love it. Beautiful. And on that note, everyone, you cannot leave not inspired. Thank you again, Jason. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful story. Thank you for that note as well. Everyone, have a great rest of your evening, and thank you for joining us for Breaking the Biz.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you've found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.